Firstly, welcome to everybody to today's webinar, and thank you very much for participating. What we're doing today is the second in a webinar series that we've been run by EUHOFA, looking at the industry's future skills needs. Craig Thompson and I hosted one of the previous webinars on this when we were looking at it from the industry's point of view, and this is the outcome of the report that was published by eHotelier some while ago called The Industry's Future Skills Needs. So what we're doing today, after this brief introduction, a quick introduction of the panelists, then I'm going to take you through some of the key report findings for education and training. We then have a number of questions for discussion amongst the panel, to which I'm asking that you might wish to contribute. We can then answer any questions, particularly from the participants, and then hopefully we may be able to come to some sort of summary at the end of that and where we might go next. But before we do that, when I finish this brief presentation, I'm going to ask you a number of poll questions that will help to set the whole thing in some sort of context. So I have 3 polls throughout the webinar, and I'll start the first one as soon as we finish this part of the presentation. So our panelists today are Craig Thompson, who's the CEO of the ICE. I'm sure Craig will wave at you. Dominik Zembowski, who's the Dean of SHMS in Switzerland. He's the one with the fancy photograph at the back and the snow on the ground. Andrew Bower, the principal of the Edge Hotel School with his branding and logo. Stuart Wiggins, Pro Vice Chancellor at ICMS in Manly in Sydney, and he's got that wonderful sunset in his background. And my name's Peter Jones, and I'm the moderator for this. So the key findings of the report for education and training were very much that the industry is undergoing rapid transformation and change. And the key issue for education and training, and this was a point that industry was making in terms of the findings of the report, was that education and training is not keeping pace with the new requirements of the industry. Their argument is that the industry is moving at such a rate, but education and training is still way behind them in terms of what their requirements are and what the industry is actually doing now. They also made the point, and this is from the industry's point of view, that the current education and training systems are not good at preparing students for the industry. And therefore the current systems do not provide sufficient emphasis on students' professional skills development. And perhaps at the latter point, which is quite telling in many ways, is that industry places a higher value on professional recognition rather than academic qualifications. So there was a lot more in that particular report, and it is downloadable from the eHotelier website, which is more about the industry, but from an education and training point of view, which is what today is all about, these were really those key findings. So the questions for education and training are really now, how can we respond? If the industry is telling us that they are rapidly changing, are we as educators flexible and fast enough at responding to change? And what are the barriers that might be stopping us responding to change? The second area is, are we really engaged with industry, or do we pretend that we're engaged with industry, but we really don't have that level of engagement, which means that we understand and working much more collaboratively with industry. An issue that's certainly true in many countries of the world is that, have we lost or are we losing hospitality education to business education? It was a telling comment from Craig that in Australia, I think not that many years ago, and certainly when I was there, that we had some 20 odd very discrete and distinct hospitality education departments or schools in higher education in Australia. Now there's only one left. So are we actually losing hospitality education to business education? Is it becoming subsumed? I think Dominic had a different word for it, but hodgepodgeological or something he called it. But are we losing that unique focus of hospitality education that would ensure that we're actually working with industry and providing for the student the opportunity that hospitality actually gives them? So it then comes to a set of questions about how can we develop courses that are flexible in meeting student and industry needs, are engaged, provide professional skills, but also equally important, the industry culture to better prepare students for opportunities within the industry. And how do we develop courses that provide professional recognition in addition to an academic or vocational qualification? So now the webinar. So I will now stop sharing my screen. And the first thing I would like to do is to do the poll. And this is just to get an insight or an understanding of what's going on in terms of your student numbers. There are two questions here that I would like you to answer. Are your student applications for hospitality going up, going down, or are they about the same? Are they increasing, are they decreasing, or are they about the same? So if you could answer that now. Whoa. I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing because I can see the results and you can't. But at the moment we have, okay. There's 20 of you so far have responded. If anybody else would like to respond, but we've had a 47, 48. If I get to a 50% participation rate. And the second question is relation to internships. Is it easier to find them? Is it harder to find them? No real change, or we do not have internships, which is quite okay. So I think the first thing to note is that so the first question is that we have 44% of all of you on the webinar today are saying that you're seeing a decrease in student numbers. Some of you, 32%, are about the same. The increasing numbers, there's about 24% at the moment who say that their numbers are increasing. Now, I did suggest there that's vocational and undergraduate. And of course, we haven't determined this by geographical location. So we know in some parts of the world, perhaps you may be seeing an increase, whereas in other parts of the world, you're seeing a decrease. But the overall picture is that we're seeing a decrease in our student numbers entering into hospitality programs. So I'm going to end the poll there. Most of you felt that it was easier to find internships than it was before the pandemic. And that may be, of course, a reflection of the skill shortages which the industry is currently facing. So I'll just quickly share those results with you. I think the most telling point for me is that as a group of people, hospitality educators, we're seeing a net decrease in some areas of hospitality students, or our numbers are approximately the same. Right, so that brings us on to the first question, really. And the first question, and I invite my colleagues on the panel, is really just on the basis of that poll. Is there anything surprising in that, or do you feel that this is something which is happening across the world? And Craig, you might like to comment because you have members, international members. Are you seeing that net decrease in interest in hospitality from the students' point of view? And what impact is that having on hospitality education in a general sense?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I mean, it's obviously a complicated pattern. When you look at anything globally, there'll be areas that say, well, we're not feeling this. Our numbers are growing. But I think certainly in let's say the more mature economies where tourism and hospitality as a discipline has been taught for the longest, and I'm thinking now that the UK, parts of Europe, Australia, I think certainly in these areas, we're seeing, difficulty in recruiting students, declining numbers of students. That to a certain extent is obviously offset with growth in places like Vietnam and India, etc., maybe in China, but it's I always compare it to the kind of the life cycle model of the product, and we've got a lot of programs and institutions and departments that have passed that peak and are frankly declining, and we're in a situation where not only is the product becoming old and outdated, but the industry is looking for different things, students are looking for different things, and our own institutions are actually looking for different things. So we've got this existential challenge to departments. Obviously today we're specifically looking at the industry sort of challenges, but really there's existential challenge to programs and courses, and yes, it's not throughout the world, but it will be throughout the world, and I think that's the important thing. What's happening now in the UK and in Europe and Australia will happen elsewhere unless we get some answers, and I think that's what today's presentation is about.
Okay. Stuart, your research that looked at, Stuart's undertaken his PhD recently and was looking at the employability of hotel graduates and so on, and the gap that seems to exist between their sets of skills on graduation and what they really need in entering into the industry. But I mean, in terms of Australia, we already know that we're seeing a slight decline, or you are seeing a decrease in the number of students. But do you think what you came out with in your research, there's a relationship between what you were finding and why there is that decrease? Stuart.
You're on mute, Stuart.
Yeah, I'll ask him to unmute.
Thanks, Peter. Sorry, the original intention of my PhD was to focus on the graduate moment, but the longer that and it was a very long PhD, I'll qualify, it took me a long time. But
they all are.
But by the time that I got to the end, it was very much focused on entry-level employability, because the further into the research that I went, it was talking to me that the first year of the undergraduate curriculum is really essential for all the stakeholders, the student, the industry, and also for us as the educator, because our discipline is not about, hopefully everybody would agree, it's our students tend not to want to just sit in the classroom for 3 years and then go into the industry after graduation. They tend to want to work pretty early, and we want them to work early, and our industry partners are clamoring for their services early on in the piece. So which focused me in on the first year of the undergraduate curriculum. The interesting thing for me was that when I read the report that you published recently on future skills, there was almost 100% alignment between what you found and what I identified as the entry-level employability characteristics that are required, and that really is quite interesting for me. And they were proposed in my thesis as being the important things to develop in the first year of the curriculum, and so which suggests that we can future-proof our students by getting started in a more focused way with industry in the first year of the curriculum, rather than focusing at the graduation end of the piece.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense.
Dominic, do you think that your views in particular, I mean, you sit from a rather ivory tower, as we can see, it's behind you in Switzerland, that we have perhaps lost our way in terms of hospitality education a bit, that we've seen that net decrease that's happening. As Craig points out, it's happening perhaps more in Europe and Americas at the moment, but will eventually happen throughout the world. So what have we lost? What's gone from what we were offering that's caused that position, especially as we all know there's a huge demand for graduates, whether vocational graduates, undergraduates, whatever. There's a huge demand for staff within the industry, and yet the supply line that we were providing is now diminishing.
I think post-COVID, everybody had a rethink about what the demands of the industry really was for them. But it's interesting, when I speak to hotel school directors, there's absolutely no dip in student numbers. They always tell you that they're bursting at the seams, that they're ready to go, things are looking up. I mean, we do know that there's a proliferation of skills imparted in some very good schools throughout Asia now that maybe 10, 15 years ago didn't have the equipment. But when you see some of the schools out there, the Taylors of this world, then this means that our undergraduate numbers, people might want to finish off in Australia, finish off in Switzerland. Postgrad seems to be going fine. But what I really think that Stuart has sort of hit upon it. When you go to the main university and you're now in a business school, you go into a class with 150 people, but sort of Stuart's research is suggesting you've got to have the wet skills, as the Malaysians would say, or the laboratories, as the Americans would say, service laboratories, or you've got to have a fine dining sort of laboratory at the first part. And I don't think that we're doing that. A lot of university programs, quite frankly, Peter, are taking it all out of a book. And I don't know about you, but I would never go to a doctor that learnt it all from the book.
No, I certainly wouldn't. That's certainly true. Andy, from your perspective, where do you see, how would you see that we can respond to those changing needs of industry? Is there something that collectively we could do, or have you got some examples of where working closely with industry overcomes some of these issues?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Peter. Clearly, we have our own hotel school, commercial hotel, running sort of as part of the educational experience. And I suppose our approach is very much, we call it industry engaged education, which means at every level, at every module, there are multiple engagements with industry. So it isn't just I suppose, the usual thing of somebody from industry coming along. In the old days, it used to be one of two things: either somebody elderly like myself, having done a job of work and then saying, I want to give something back and I want to tell them my life story, which is more about them and their self-appeasement, or it's somebody who wants to recruit people. But what we do is we say, if you want access to our students, you've got to be engaged in actually helping us to deliver the curriculum. So this is something that is a communal thing, where they come along, they will slot into the modules that we're doing and deliver some information about what's going on in industry at the moment. It keeps the syllabus contemporary, but what it does is, it's even more important to what we've just been talking about. It engages the students with their intended industry, and it means that they're far more likely to build networks, to feel part of a larger community, to actually feel that they have a clear route that they want to move towards. And then they make those contacts as they go through their entire curriculum, from when they've come in all the way through to the final year. So it's not just a milk round in the final year. And I think this is something that more and more of our competitors are starting to copy, which is great, because actually, we're not about trying to keep these as trade secrets. It's about being, trying to get good practice or different practice out there, and certainly at the moment, the industry is very much willing to engage. They have all sorts of reasons to want to engage.
Yes. And of course, their interest in engaging, of course, is the potential for employability from the graduates or from the students that they're interacting with. So it's that direct connection which helps them as well.
But it's also about being able to have an input to the syllabus and have an input to guiding students to what their organizations are doing. But it's also about actually being able to guide people's learning. And up until now, as Dominic was saying, you know, it's a case of here's the book and everything that's in the book is what you will learn, rather than having a far more open approach and being able to say to people, well, actually, you can influence our students and the way in which they learn and the things that they learn about. So it's a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, I think flexibility there is obviously the key, isn't it? How can you construct a flexible curriculum that responds to the changes within the industry, meets the academic or the vocational needs of whoever regulates your curriculum, without it being too constrained and without it being too formulaic? I was mentioning to Stuart earlier that I've just reviewed a course. I do quite a few. I've just reviewed a course only yesterday looking at a hospitality management program, and the first module on the hospitality management program was Management 101. And so you look at that and you think to yourself, well, goodness gracious me, you know, the first thing that a student's going to understand about hospitality is Management 101, not about that personal interaction. There is nothing in there about the culture. There's nothing in there about working collaboratively in teams and so on. So, I mean, the issue about soft skills is a particularly relevant one. Paul Weeks has noted, you know, that they're after personal and soft skills. That's what came out from the research that we did in for the report. And they are very much interested in those soft skills, but it's those, how does the education and training arms actually encourage the development of those soft skills if all they're doing is sitting in a classroom and learning from a book?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Craig.
it's interesting. I'm just going to go to the point you mentioned about how can we be more flexible, Peter, because I think that's the crux of it, and that's what industry is looking for. And I can I can see we're almost at a watershed where academic institutions are being forced to break away from the accreditation models. I mean, simply that in my opinion, that we're going to have to start offering programs that are not bound by national accreditation and all the strictures that imposes. And we are able to offer programs that are able to be changed quicker and are more responsive, so we can offer them in different ways to different people at different times in different formats, and that's the only way. And if we're restricted from doing that through accreditation systems, well, then we've reached a watershed where we need to start breaking away from that. And that's what you've seen, as you know, in Kathmandu. Yes, that you know, the apprenticeship model there. I'm seeing it with institutions I'm working with in Dubai. They're saying we just can't work with inside the current systems. We have to do something different just to be able to survive and to deliver what the industry needs. So you know, it's an interesting drift for the future.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting that conversations are already taking place, and I'm not sure how universal this is, but certainly as far as I'm concerned, conversations are taking place with industry, and the industry are saying, well, do we really need you guys anymore? You know, we used to rely on you to some extent, and we used to work with you, but do we really need you anymore when there may be other opportunities for us? We could recruit people directly, and then we can actually look after them. I think the whole sort of the cultural attitude of the industry, and that was probably as a result the major disruptor was the pandemic, but now they're looking much more at, they need to negotiate employment contracts, they need to look after their people, they need to provide them with continuous development. And many of them are almost saying, well, look, we can do all this now, we don't need you guys. Why would they need to go to an education institution when we can probably provide that, A, to meet our needs, but actually create a much better experience for that individual?
Yeah,
Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt regulatory wise, in highly regulated educational markets, there's this lag of time. One colleague was joking with me the other day about the training packages in Australia to be a florist, and you know, still in the essential skills bracket, was able to operate a cash register. You know, I also spoke to Margot McNeil, who's one of the bright lights in learning and teaching education in Australia. And she sort of agreed with me to go through the governing body to get a degree through sometimes takes up to 2.5 years. So then what happens when we're adjusting and ChatGPT arrives across your desk and you want to get the students engaged in it because it's not going to go away? Skillful curriculum developers always stick this one course at the top of the degree and call it contemporary issues in hospitality, and then we tend to throw whatever comes at us into it at the end, you know. And so, as you say, is there any reason why the industry is sort of backing off and saying, let's do it ourselves? It's quite a normal phenomena, you know, that seems to be happening now. You know?
Yeah, and of course it's now happening in other industries as well. So they're seeing models of this occurring elsewhere. So if you take the UK as an example, last weekend they actually talked about providing apprenticeship programs for nurses and doctors. So they wouldn't actually have to go to university. Well, they would actually be directly employed. And I thought, well, we were probably doing that in the 19th century. So, you know, there might not have been much change there, but I can understand where they're coming from. And from an employer's point of view, and also from the individual's point of view, there could be some real benefits for that, not the least of which costs. Craig.
There's a mistrust in university education. And I go back to the old Times Ed 2015, when Ernst & Young, they dropped your GPA or your degree classification as the sort of marker for graduate recruitment. And because they said there was no evidence that success at university is linked to achievement in professional assessments. So if they're giving their own numeric tests and online strength assessments to university graduates, plus with the advent of micro-credentials and all these things, what bodes well for university education? I'm not sure. It's very interesting at the moment.
Sorry, I think that we're touching upon a concept that I'm quite interested in and is an avenue for us to explore. And that is the whole education process as part of the broader professional development piece, because I think we're guilty of often looking at our curriculum as, you know, as being an island within the whole professional development of an individual and getting involved in the industry's professional development. And for me, I think that the opportunity for us is to work with industry so that we've got more relevance in professional development. You know, we've got to question why, as you say, Peter, industry want to go it alone. Why would industry have to invest so much of their own money in creating their own departments to run professional development, when we are the education institutions that have got a lot of power and knowledge to develop and provide? And I know ICMS at the moment, we're looking at the whole professional development of our students, of which the curriculum is one part. And we're developing a professional development lab which we engage with industry through, that is available for all of our students to accelerate their employability and engage and their networking with industry, if they choose to. But so adding these value adds to the experience that will show that and prove our relevance with industry and bring them into our operation more. What we're interested in doing is developing this culture of employability within the college, so that we walk the talk every day. And that means that industry have to be there more consistently than just being invited in to do the odd guest lecture or come onto a course advisory committee. They've got to be part of the fabric of the college. And only by developing this will we then be more relevant to professional development for industry, as well as working on the professional development of our students and getting our students to see that this is a professional development process.
Yeah, and I rather take the word professional development in all of that, because one of the issues I think for our colleagues that might not be in the higher education level is they're often referred to as vocational schools. That might be part of their culture within the company, within the country, sorry, but that doesn't take away that level of professionalism that we've got to try and make sure that we have this culture of professionalism, that we are seen as being a professional body, if you like, that actually is contributing to the wealth of the industry overall. And sometimes I think that gets a bit lost. We get seen in a different light. But I mean, I want to ask the question for our colleagues
Peter,
who are not in higher education.
Peter,
go on, Andy.
Before we go in, I mean, I know Craig has had his hand up as well, so I'm just going to bunch in here and
go for it.
Far be it from me to criticize things that people have been saying, you in particular. I'd throw one view out there, which is, if industry wanted to do this and they have the money to do it, why haven't they done it? I don't think that industry is too bothered about setting up their own qualifications. There's some great examples of industry where they have set up their own qualifications, where they've done their own thing. But given the size of the industry, I think they are still looking at various forms of educational providers to do it for them. It's not an area they want to go in. And let's face it, post-COVID, they have had more pressure to do this than ever before. And there really hasn't been a huge groundswell of organizations doing it. So to say, well, you know, industry are going to be doing it. Sure, there are going to be some who will be doing it. But I think the responsibility is still on us as suppliers to provide that support. And as Stuart was saying, engage with industry beyond that horrific term, the industry forum or the industry advisory group, which is an absolute terror. They've got to be part of the fabric of what you do every day. Yeah. You know, and I think we should move away from this idea. We're in a strong position to be able to provide industry with support. We've got to move forward. They're coming to us. I think, you know, we've got to facilitate that movement where we actually engage with them, rather than in the old, we're academics, there's industry, and there's a gap between us.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. What I am suggesting, though, is that they're not necessarily looking for academic qualifications anymore, and that they are actually saying it's not what it's more about getting some sort of professional recognition, rather than I need these to be qualified. I need them to have this. What they're saying is, can they be recognized? And I go back in history, not that long ago, but if you did your management training at the Savoy, that's all you needed. You didn't have a degree. You just had a badge that said, I did my management training at the Savoy. And I think hotel groups are beginning to look, hotel groups in particular, and some caterers, some of the really big international caterers are looking at the similar thing. It's more about, how do we get some recognition for what we do as part and parcel of how we deliver to our customers, rather than thinking about an academic qualification outside.
You're thinking about Sorry, Craig, you'll get your moment in a moment. You're still waiting there with your hand up.
Go on, unmute yourself. Join in, get in.
But
Okay.
I think, you know, this idea of industry having, you know, a badge of honor and this sort of thing, I don't think you're then thinking about the next generation and what they're looking for, which is they don't want to just go to one location. They want to travel the world. They want to have all sorts of experiences. And the thing they can take with them is a degree or a qualification. Just working with one well-known brand doesn't always do that, and they're looking for this transferable qualification, whatever level it may be, which they can take, whether that be from, heaven help us, Swiss hotel schools or Australian hotel schools or wherever they may be. You know, that's something that is a brand that is transferable. And I think we've also got to think about what, you know, the next generation of professionals are looking for. Go to you before you.
Okay. Interesting. I will jump in there because I think that's changing as well. I think with what we're seeing in students is that that they're being far more vocal and active in terms of their demands. And if the course is not delivering what they expect right from the start, they'll switch. And we're seeing that. We're seeing students joining courses, giving it a taste, and then switching out. And I think that that's very much a feature of you know, the younger generation today, that they will switch more quickly than they have in the past. I just want to look at a couple of comments, because there's a comment from Paul about the rightful place of hospitality in higher education, and there's a comment from Sarah, and they're interesting as well. And I think that they both point to the fact that we've within higher education institutions, we've developed hospitality and tourism, but the institutions themselves, and I say the accreditation systems, but the research exercises and the institutional demands have forced a shape on our programs that's traditionally used to be the 4-year degree. Now it's the 3-year degree, always with a research element at the end. So even when we do engage with industry, we say to them, okay, well, how would you like to engage with this 15-week module? And how would you like to engage with this research project? And they go, well, we don't, because that's actually not, you're offering us to engage, but with what? We actually don't want the degree, and we don't want the research element. I mean, let's face it, how much of the research that is actually conducted by students or academics is really sort of use, and can we see it reflected in the industry? Very, very little. You know, so I agree with Paul's comments that yes, there are certain institutions that rightfully claim their place amongst higher education research institutions, but the majority, in my opinion, need to break away from that and say, you know, we need to be doing something different from the 3-year degree, something different from the dissertation at the end. And if we don't, then we be more and more irrelevant to the industry. So it really is about, you know, a watershed and breaking away from the old structure in my opinion.
Yeah, I think your point is well made. It's about how do we maintain our relevance to the industry, and that's got to be through with a much more comprehensive, perhaps, engagement with the industry, working with the industry much more collaboratively. Can I just move us on a little bit, and I'll put another poll up which might help us to inform that conversation a little bit. So hang on, right. Industry engagement, and I want to come back to the curriculum one at the end, just to get a sense of what we've been talking about of engagement. So I'm not sure that you can answer all these questions actually, but I'm hoping you can. So because it's multi-choice, I think you can probably tick them all, but if you can't, can you just select that one which is the most important to you? Oh, there we go. No, you can select them all. So that what I'm trying to get at from this is, what is the nature of the engagement that the participants today have actually already got with industry? So industry field visits seems to be strong. Staff industry secondments. I mean, in some institutions, they almost make that a rite of passage that their staff have got to be seconded to industry and so on. Engagement in student projects is obviously quite strong. Most people have got an advisory board. How valuable that is might be another matter. You all participate in recruitment fairs, I'm sure you do. Very little industry sponsorship of students, and not too many where industry are running masterclasses and you've got that level of engagement with the industry coming in and delivering part of that curriculum. So that's in itself, there's just that one question. And I'm going to stop that now because we've got quite a lot of responses to that. So yes, there's some good evidence, although it's only 65% direct engagement in projects. We'd expect advisory board and recruitment fairs, not so much industry sponsorship, direct sponsorship of students, which might be another area. Obviously some field visits, but not as strong, nowhere near as strong in terms of that notion of industry staff, industry secondments, and whether there might be the opportunity for staff exchanges in that area to help to build the curriculum, but also to better inform the industry. So I'm going to stop that poll at that point. So I think there's some quite interesting things that have come out of that. And could I'll do the last one because we're coming towards the end and I want to give you a chance to ask any specific questions and try and summarize. This is about how quickly can you change your curriculum to respond to the industry? Are you in control of your own curriculum or not? Is it difficult to make changes, or not too difficult? Or in some cases, of course, you might be impossible because you follow an external curriculum. You don't have any choice about what goes into your curriculum because it's completely externally regulated. And how quickly can you do it? Not so quickly. We haven't got anybody that can do it quickly in terms of making those changes. Some of you say it's impossible because you can't control it. We could actually make this, if I might think about how we might do this again in a slightly different way, because clearly I think there's going to be a different response from those organizations which are private and they can make that sort of change themselves, and those which are particularly regulated, either through the university sectors and the higher education or through the vocational sectors where they don't really have any chance of changing the curriculum. But at least what this might be doing is helping you to go back and say, hey guys, you know, we need greater collaboration, we need greater input, and we need a faster response rate in terms of trying to change that curriculum. So there's only 18% of you that are in control of your own curriculum. 43% not too difficult because you can make some internal decisions. Difficult, 31% say that it's difficult, regulated by other agencies, and 10% impossible. So 41% say they can't do it or it's really difficult. 41% say it's not too difficult, but we can do it internally. And only 16% say that they can do it easily. But if you think about the timings that it takes, only 19% can make changes quickly within a semester. Not so quickly, more like a year is 48%. Slowly would take over a year, 26%. And some 6% say it's impossible because we don't control the process at all. So I think, Dom, you made that point the other day, didn't you, about how quickly can you respond to change and how difficult that is.
Yeah, and it depends really, yeah. Are you private? Are you overly regulated? Are you part of, you know, sometimes the university can be a big monster as you try and put things through. And also, I mean, we probably should look at this from the administrator's point of view as well, because if you go into a position, you're a great teacher, so they sort of bump you up to assistant dean or something, and then you start to do all these tasks. Have you got an industry feedback board? Well, you tick that box, that one's ticked, and you have a quick chat with them, you know, that's moved on. Do you go on field trips? You organize one and that's moved on. So there's a lot of, it's quite interesting. You've got to really, really want to do it. Andy made a comment about industry boards, but the best industry board I ever saw was run by Fritz Gubler from the Blue Mountains when he was an owner-operator. And I, as his dean, inherited a $5,000 bill after the first industry board. I inherited it because all the board members from industry were paid $500 each to come to the meeting, you know, and we had Bill Galvin, the CEO of Tourism Training Australia. Reggie Pereira flew in from the Malaysian Association of Hotels. But if they're going to get paid, my goodness, they were going to give you what's trending, what's going to happen, what must be in your curricula. So a lot of us, a lot of the times when I worked for the state university system with the curricula, there was a lot of box ticking and saying, yes, we do it, but how excellent were the events that you actually ran? And I think the privates have a lot more leeway, which is really why I was so glad to land back in Switzerland. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I probably left you that bill anyway. It was probably inherited from my time there. Yeah. I've asked anybody, is there anybody has got a specific question? We've got one from Dennis, actually, Dennis Sheehan, who's a publisher. And he's asking, does education recognise employers and students as customers? Now, that's a different debate altogether, and one I'm not sure we're quite ready for today. But we tend to look at them as either co-collaborators in terms of employers. But do we really treat them as customers, or is it, I think the general answer is no, we don't. And that's probably a hang up, and there will be a different approach from private providers than there will be from over-regulated and state providers as well, or public providers.
Yeah, just on that, Peter, and it's kind of related, and my first thought when I saw Dennis's question was that was going through my mind when I was doing my PhD, and I adopted a stakeholder theory approach that identified, obviously, industry, students, and government as the major stakeholders in the context that I was doing the research. And I just found that quite useful to be able to understand the needs of each stakeholder and what their aims in the process are. In arriving at the conclusions. So for me, Dennis, the answer would be yes.
Okay. We're coming towards the end. Has anybody else got, there are a few questions in there, but I'm not sure we've really got the time and opportunity to answer them fully. But has anybody on our panel got any other points that they would like just to make in conclusion? And then I'll try and give a very brief summary.
Just really about the future, Peter. Where does this go? I mean, I think the numbers of people that have been involved today, and the amount of chat we've got and questions, for me, that there should be a follow-up. You know, we should look at specific topics and discuss them, and yeah, use this momentum we've got. Because as I say, we're at an absolutely critical point, and we need to do something, and we need to do it together. I think that's the other important point. It's not about competition here. It's finding a solution, because we're all at threat. So let's work together and yeah, maybe find some ways forward here.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nothing from you, Andy? That's unusual, but nevertheless, we'll go with that. Right. Can I thank you all very much indeed for coming and participating? I think it's been very useful, and I hope you found it equally useful as we have. But the points I'm taking away with this is that Craig's term of the watershed that we're seeing a definite decrease in the number of students. That's not necessarily universal, but therefore hospitality education seems to be under threat from a number of sources. One is that you've got fewer number of students wanting to do hospitality courses, that we've got less specialist, if you like, and I'll call them that, or professional hospitality provision than we had before. And that's happened certainly universally in many domains. So we've got fewer students, we've got fewer providers, we've got more demand coming from the industry. And we need to find a way of actually overcoming some of those issues to raise the profile of hospitality education as a professional education, and to be able to recognize the real level of engagement that we probably need with the industry. And so many of the points that have been made by the panel are that how do we get that engagement? How do we get the engagement directly in the curriculum? How does it embed itself within that curriculum? That the curriculum is not seen as something which is ring-fenced and outside of what the industry is really all about. So there are all of those dimensions in this, and there's a lot more as well. But from our point of view, from a EUHOFA point of view, in terms of the organization, that's an organization which is obviously there to promote its members, but also to help to promote hospitality education on an international platform. And I think this has helped us to understand where hospitality education is at the moment and perhaps where it needs to go. But the issue is a really big fundamental one, and it's about how do we address that, and how do the vocational schools address that when they don't hold the controls of, they're not in control of those levers. And I will come back to my point, although Andy perhaps would disagree with me, that I'm certainly seeing industry taking more of an initiative to do with training and ignoring education. If you see that there is a distinction there. And that clearly is obviously got to be a major concern as far as hospitality education is concerned. There is a role. Somehow we've got to improve our positioning in terms of with regulatory authorities, but also with the industry, but also we've then got to be able to promote the benefits that we provide to both the industry and, as Dennis would call them, our student customers or potential student customers. Anybody got any final comments? No? We're coming right to the very end. So can I thank you all very much for attending. Thank you for your contributions, in particular to the panel, Craig, Andy, Stuart and Dominic. I'm always grateful for you for your comments and your contributions. And I do hope that you've enjoyed it, you've got something from it. And if you would feel that this type of approach of having some sort of webinar, we might do it in smaller groups with breakout rooms so we can get more internal discussion. If you would like something like that, then that's something that we could organize in the future and might form the basis to be able for some of these discussions to carry on, but also to make them slightly more relevant to the different sectors that we've got represented on the webinar today. So perhaps if you could just indicate with a thumbs up or something, if you feel that there would be some use in developing these ideas, but to doing them in a different format perhaps, and certainly doing them so that there's more opportunity for people to directly participate. And we can do that through breakout rooms and so on. So if you just like to just use the reaction button and show a thumbs up if you think there's merit in actually pursuing these ideas and taking these ideas forward, then please do that and just do it with the button. Yeah, I've got quite a few buttons on the screen. Yeah, good. Okay, so there does seem to be a view that it would be useful, and so that is something that we may well want to take forward. So thank you very much indeed for coming. There will be a recording there is a recording that will be made available. All people that have registered, then you will get the link to the recording so that you can, if you really want to, you can share the recording with other people and so on. So, and we will make that available to other people that weren't able to join us today. So thank you very much indeed for coming. Thank you for your contributions. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye. On watching the recording and doing some minor edits, I realised that you as participants wouldn't have been able to see the direct results of the polls as we were taking them. So I've constructed these slides showing those results, which I hope you might find helpful.